Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dangerous Ideas. I'm Lee Camp. How's it going out there? So, another day, another assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Uh, Thank you, Jolly Lollipop, for supporting the show. Later in the show, by the way, about half an hour, I should have Medea Benjamin showing up, the co-founder and kind of face, I would say, of Code Pink. Anytime you've seen a video of a woman standing up in Congress or showing up and harassing members of AIPAC in the most beautiful way, 80% of the time it's Medea Benjamin. But she's not just great on AIPAC. She is very informed on Cuba, on Iran, on Gaza, on all those things. So we'll be talking to her about all of those things coming up in about half an hour. Before we get to that, and before we get to the way states are seemingly successfully fighting against ICE, and before we get to the historical precedent showing that Trump's form of fascism may not have very long to last. If you look at the historical precedent, if you look at history, Trump's style, his lovely style of fascism doesn't tend to last long. We'll get into that a little bit coming up. But before we get to that, let's talk for a moment. I couldn't just fully ignore it, though I would like to. About the assassination attempt, or whatever you want to call it, at the White House press corps dinner thing. I have not been to the press corps dinner event, but I have been to the competing event that was basically across the street from it one year. I think it was put on by the Young Turks, and I wasn't. It's not that I was part of the Young Turks. I was just one of the people invited. So I walked by the Washington Hilton or whatever and saw the rich people in line there, and went to the thing going on next door. But now here's the thing. I'll just say real quick. For one thing, I hate that when shit like this goes down, you're expected to have some really interesting take immediately. You have to, every person with a YouTube channel has to know immediately everything that happened, even though no one knows everything that happened. They haven't revealed everything that, like in the first 8 minutes. But beyond just that, I don't believe that every assassination attempt is fake and planned and CGI'd, and there was a guy they had a fake ear attached to the back of Donald Trump. I don't believe that. Sometimes just assholes get shot. Like that's just a thing. It's just America. That's sometimes it really just shit goes down. As Alex Jones has proven, sometimes you can act like something's fake when it's not fake. But I will say, of all of the myriad of assassination attempts on Trump, this one seems to be I'll just say the most easily fakeable, if it were to be faked, because you don't have the guy actually get close to Trump. He doesn't kill anyone. He's just outside. You do it at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, so it gets the most coverage. It scares the media, which means the media joins Trump's side if they weren't already. And the other thing is, like, we know Trump notoriously hates the White House press corps dinner because the president gets made fun of. And that was kind of what people used to like about it, is like, oh, you could see the president sitting there while he's like, someone's making fun of him a little bit. But you'll notice that, like, under Obama, it usually wasn't any scorching rebukes. It was just little light jokes about him. Oh, he's not, his only things like, meanwhile, as he's killing millions of people around the world with either his wars in Afghanistan or anywhere else, or his war on Syria, economic wars, in many ways that he was killing millions of people, they would make jokes about how his only scandal was the time he wore a tan suit. It's that kind of shit. But Trump hates that because he gets made fun of. Now, I'm sure he could manufacture that thing so that, and this was the first one he was going to attend, right? And I'm sure he can manufacture it so that he doesn't get made fun of at all. But it seems like he'd still be walking into a situation where he doesn't know if he's not going to be made fun of at all. And yet he showed up, but it ended up being something that benefits him because everyone's gonna get in line behind the flag, get tied, lace up your boots and get in line behind the flag, and ignore all those other stories, such as the epic loss in Iran that is really shaping up to be the end of the U.S. empire, or epic the epic Epstein files that keep coming out. New information dripping out every day about the pedophilia that Trump was involved in. Anyway, I'm just saying, I'm not saying this one was set up. I'm just saying if you were to set one up, this would be the way you do it without actually risking anything bad happening. Anyway, that's all I got for that. If you want all the details that they have, then go watch mainstream media. Because that's where you can get all the latest details on the guy who shot one security guard or whatever, so one Secret Service person into his bulletproof vest, and then was arrested, and somehow arrested without being shot, which seems odd. The Secret Service, when someone brandishes and fires a gun, I feel like their norm is to put like 900 bullets in that person. But anyway, what do I know about what the Secret Service would do? Some quick notes on the ceasefire, the negotiations or lack thereof with Iran. It seems like Iran is largely negotiating the terms, and Trump is, of course, pretending that they're not. But this is from Drop Site News. This is from an Iranian official who remained anonymous. We're currently moving forward with our own design, meaning for the ceasefire and the negotiations, and we would feel continuing negotiations doesn't make sense until the U.S. government lifts the maritime blockade. The latest thing that Iran has put forward is that basically lift the blockade, promise there will be no more war, and we will then fully open the Strait of Hormuz. I assume still with a toll booth, but still it would be open. And so not nearly as many stipulations as it seemed there were before, but still Iran controlling the terms. Tehran, the Iranian official said, remains firm in its demand that the U.S. naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz be lifted as a condition to move forward. If that happens, a formal second round of top-level direct talks can happen. But nothing is, Trump is bragging that he shut down the negotiations, where that does not seem to be the case because everything he says is a lie. The Iranians are saying time is working in our favor for the 3 M's: munitions, markets, meaning the economies around the world, and the midterms, meaning if this, not just if the Strait of Hormuz hasn't resolved itself and the war with Iran hasn't resolved itself, but if the economy is collapsing come the midterms, will the Republicans get a shellacking. Now, you and I know that the Republicans and Democrats are not all that different, but to Trump, they are. To Trump, Democrats would mean he wouldn't have his own brand of fascism in the White House, and that's what he wants. Our country has had negotiations. This is again back to a diplomat with Iran. Our country has had negotiations with the Americans at various levels over the past 30 years, formal and informal, public and back channel, said the Iranian official. It's as if they're showing up to a football match with rugby rules. His point is that the Americans don't negotiate in good faith. The 2 past times that Iran has been trying to negotiate with the U.S. and Israel, the U.S. and Israel have attacked them, bombed them during the negotiations. So basically, the thing with that is, that sounds classic Trumpian, is I'm going to pretend to be having negotiations with them. I'm then going to use it as a ruse to bomb them during the negotiations, and they won't know what's happened. Whoa, we're getting bombed, and I thought we were negotiating. The problem is that maybe works once, and probably not even then, because they probably still thought they might bomb during negotiations. But if you're lucky, that gambit works once, Trump, and it ruins your ability to have negotiations later. Trump has now used that gambit or attempted gambit twice. The negotiations last summer during the 12-day war, and the negotiations recently before this war started. So He's used that trick, so-called, twice, and it completely kneecaps any ability to have a sensible negotiation because you've now shown the other party, hey, we'll pretend we're negotiating, but in fact, we're just going to bomb you. Iran has total disdain for Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and views him as both oblivious of diplomatic processes and totally ignorant of technical issues. Kushner is viewed by Iran. These are the two main negotiators, as opposed to Witkoff and Kushner. But as I said there, Trump views Witkoff as both an idiot who's ignorant and an asshole, just like all of the awful things you could be if you're trying to negotiate with someone. Kushner is the other lead negotiator, and he's viewed by Iran as Israel's man at the table. So basically, the two U.S. negotiators are just morons, idiots, and Israel. Iran, the senior official said, does not see any reason to deal with those two without another figure present, such as J.D. Vance. Yeah, and are you shocked? Is anyone shocked that Iran doesn't trust anything the U.S. is doing? So the U.S., of course, I've already brought you many people and many points of evidence, many data points showing that this very well could be the straw that broke the camel's back. The camel in this scenario being the U.S. empire. Okay, wanted to bring that quick update about Iran negotiations, but I haven't talked in recent days that much about ICE, the ongoing black bagging of Americans, and just wonderful human beings who might not be American citizens. But guess what? I have this crazy idea that, like, even if you're not an American citizen, you still shouldn't be treated like utter garbage and tortured like you're not human. Whoa, what happened to me? How did I end up this way? That I think humans should be treated like humans. Whoa, it's crazy. Activists say, well, so what I want to bring you is that states are having some success at greatly slowing down and kind of, I don't know, dismantling might be a bit strong, but slowing down ICE's procedures, making it far more difficult for them to operate. The latest one is New Mexico, which you don't really view New Mexico as being a lefty paradise. But New Mexico has become, well, and speaking of that, though, I did recently cover on Unredacted Tonight, which unfortunately last episode was this past Thursday, but I did recently cover that New Mexico has recently made it so that everyone gets free daycare for their children. Everyone who needs it gets free daycare. Oh, what? States can do this? You mean states can actually do beneficial things for the people who live there? That's fucking crazy. Whoa, that's so crazy. But anyway, New Mexico becomes the latest state to end cooperation with ICE under a new law. Activists say, this from Sheer Post, activists say ending local and state cooperation with ICE is a key way to obstruct Trump's mass deportation machine. Grassroots coalitions in a growing number of states are working to pass legislation to cut municipal or state ties to immigration and customs enforcement. The efforts are gaining momentum. Rebecca Sheff, a staff attorney at the American Civil Liberties Union of New Mexico, said, quote, "We see a tremendous upswelling of this type of legislation being proposed in different states across the country." Sheff helped draft New Mexico's Immigrant Safety Act with Governor Grisham. Signed into law in February, the law prohibits state and local governments from entering into agreements to detain individuals for civil immigration violations, stops the use of public land for immigration detention, and bans agreements that turn local law enforcement into immigration agents. And you know, we've seen how much ICE needs the help of the state and has been using the help of police, the help of police facilities. When people often will call the cops on ICE, and then the cops have to decide whether to deal with ICE or let them do what they're doing. So all these reasons add up to it's kind of hard for ICE to function if this particular state, whichever one it is, isn't helping them. And we're seeing that again and again. Now, New Mexico is not the first one to do this. Comparable laws to curb civil immigration detention are already on the books in at least half a dozen other states, including New Jersey, California, Washington, Illinois, Colorado, and Maryland. Many have been passed under the banner of dignity, not detention, which officially launched in 2010. Because I don't know if you know this, we were detaining people and torturing them in small prison cells since way back under Obama, even. What? No way. I thought he was just the good guy who never did anything bad. And the article goes on to list many of the people that have been killed in these detentions. Many are tortured in a variety of ways, put into cells where they, tiny cells, which is essentially solitary confinement, although it's usually packed with a lot of people, but barely see the light of day, barely getting edible food, water is scarce, all of those things. When the 2010 Dignity Not Detention campaign launched, the American Friends Service Committee wrote in an info sheet that 300,000 immigrants per year were being held in 350 private, federal, state, and local jails and prisons. 300,000. That was in 2010. Way before Trump. Before Trump was just a glint in Lady Liberty's eye. The second Trump administration arrested 300,000 migrants in its first 6 months in office alone. Currently, over 60,000 are jailed in 425 facilities nationwide. So yeah, these efforts by the states are having an impact, and we should continue. Yes, it's a Band-Aid. It's a Band-Aid. A lot of things that you can do or have an impact are sometimes Band-Aids. But those Band-Aids help people. And so, yes, we need to work to defund and dismantle DHS and ICE and everything else. But these Band-Aids also help people. So I am not opposed to Band-Aids as we continue to move forward. If you just do the Band-Aid and then you go, it's over, we did it, then that's a problem. That's totally a problem. I wanted to show this video of just to continue to give you ways that people are standing up to ICE and states and people individually. I wanted to give this video of a woman dealing with an ICE agent, and unfortunately it's in Spanish, but some of you understand Spanish, and I'm going to keep pausing it and read the translation. I do not speak Spanish. Well, not anymore. I did. There's word on the street that I studied it in high school, but don't remember almost any of it. Anyway, this woman does a great job of remaining calm, remaining friendly, because, if you tell them to go F themselves, then they can use that as an excuse to drag you out of your car. So remaining calm and friendly and saying what needs to be said. And so I'm going to show you. So not only is it fun to watch someone just defeat ICE and ICE stop of their vehicle, but also it teaches people what they should be saying to ICE if they approach you, if they approach someone you know. And I'll go more into this afterwards. This is also kind of the same thing you should say if a cop does just about anything to you, but I'll talk more about that in a second. Oh, and by the way, on this platform, I'm very excited to announce this. I found a platform. I might have actually mentioned this before on the show. I found a platform I hate more than Instagram, but it's owned by Instagram. Threads is absolutely more fucking awful than Instagram. I know I've had a Threads account for years or whatever. I never really looked at it. They won't even let you pause a goddamn video. Do they just find new ways to make it more annoying? Do they have brainstorm meetings on how to make these platforms worse? There's no way they don't. It's owned by it was created by fucking Instagram. They know people pause videos. You just gotta just open the page and see what part of the video you end up on. Go fuck yourselves, Jesus. All right. Anyway, here it is. If I can restart it and unmute it in a way that actually makes it somewhat audible, who knows?
The reason why I
Hola,
stopped you,
no hablo inglés, disculpa, ¿no hablas español?
sí hablo español. El motivo que te paré es porque estamos haciendo una inspección de inmigración. Ocupo saber si usted tiene documentos para estar en este país. ¿Me permite?
So I guess the only way for me to pause it is to actually literally hold on the bottom bar, which is obnoxious. Anyway, so he says, can you, the reason I stopped you is for an immigration inspection, and I want to know if you have documents.
Para estar en este país. ¿Me permites tu ID, por favor?
Documents to be in this country. Please hand me your ID.
Tu ID, por favor.
¿Cometí alguna infracción para que me pares? Porque no.
Okay.
And she says, did I commit an infraction to make you stop me? Because if not...
No.
Okay. No cometiste ninguna infracción, pero corrí el número de placas y me parece que el dueño del carro no está legalmente en este país. Ocupo saber si a usted me puede mostrar su ID para verificar si es usted.
And he says, no infraction, but I ran the numbers on the plates and it says this car might belong to someone who's not in the country legally. Now, two things. One is he might have done that and there might have been some program that said, oh, might be not in the country legally, but who knows what program he has and whether it's accurate and what it says and how would they know what I feel like that's unlikely to be true to begin with. But secondly, they're allowed to lie to you. They're legally, cops and ICE are allowed to lie to you. So don't believe things they say. They can waive things they claim are warrants and it's a menu to a restaurant. Like the courts have found they can lie to you. So don't just believe them. They're fucking liars.
Mostrar su ID para verificar si es usted la persona del dueño del carro.
Pero tú no eres policía para pararme o algo así. No me puedes parar nomás.
Okay, soy agente de...
And she says, but you're not a cop, so you can't stop me.
Okay, soy agente de inmigración, señora, del departamento del DHS y estamos haciendo una inspección de inmigración. ¿Usted es ciudadana de este país?
Pero no pasa ningún...
And he again tries to slip in the question he wants the answer to, which are you a citizen of this country? He says, I'm not a cop, but I'm ICE and we're doing an immigration stop.
Ningún puente o ninguna inspección.
Okay. Señora, ¿de qué país es usted?
Yo no pasé ningún puente.
And he says, ma'am, what country are you from?
No pasé ningún puente y me tienes...
She's saying, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't have any infractions. I didn't pass any bridges.
Que sí, porque me paraste, porque solamente los policías me pueden parar.
Okay, señora, si usted no coopera conmigo, lo voy a tener que arrestar por obstrucción de leyes, okay? So, permítame su identificación ahorita.
No des...
So he then says, if you don't help me, if you don't answer me, then I can arrest you for getting in the way of law enforcement.
No deseo responder ninguna pregunta. Estoy ejerciendo mis derechos bajo la quinta enmienda a guardar silencio. No doy mi consentimiento para ningún registro en virtud de mis derechos en la cuarta enmienda.
She essentially says, I'm not answering any questions based on my Fifth Amendment rights.
Invoco mi derecho a la sexta.
And that's the thing that a lot of people don't know, which is first of all, a lot of courts have shown they have right, like whether she's a citizen or not, there's an ongoing debate as to whether they have constitutional rights, but many do. And secondly, a lot of people don't realize that, the famous one, every, Law and Order SVU, every cop, anything you watch, the Miranda rights, right? As they're arresting you, you have the right to remain silent. Guess what? You have that right before they arrest you. Propaganda shows have made us all think you have to be arrested to have that right. No, you have that right just walking down the street. The right to remain silent. Most people don't know it. Most people don't realize you got the right to remain silent all of the times. So don't wait until you get arrested to say, I have the right to remain silent based on my Fifth Amendment right.
A la sexta enmienda, hablar con un abogado. ¿Estoy detenida o me puedo ir?
She then says, I have a Sixth Amendment right to talk to a lawyer. I'll not answer more questions without a lawyer present, my lawyer present. And then these are also the keywords. Those are some keywords. The other keywords are, am I being detained or do I have a right to leave? Because now they have to answer. And if they're not detaining you, you have a right to leave. And this, again, many of you may not be immigrants. You may not have this worry, concern, but this goes for all of the things. This goes for if a cop just pulls you over and says, I feel like you weren't driving very well. I feel like you swerved a little. I feel like you didn't stop fully at that stop sign. You can say these things and often get out of what they're trying to do, which is to get you to either lie to them or get you to say something that actually incriminates yourself.
¿O me puedo ir?
Señora, ahorita está detenida. Estamos haciendo una investigación sobre su estatus legal en este país. ¿Es usted ciudadana de este país?
No, yo no.
He again asks, are you a citizen of this country? Because if she says no, first of all, if she says yes and is lying, now she's lied to a federal agent. That's a greater offense and probably would, if it was her case went in front of a judge, get her kicked out more quickly. Secondly, if she says yes and she's lying. If she says no, well, now we can just arrest her because she said she's not a citizen. So in this case, she's allowed to say, I'm not going to answer.
No, yo no respondo preguntas sin mi abogado. ¿Estoy detenida o me puedo ir?
Señora.
She says, I do not respond to questions without my lawyer. Am I being detained or am I free to leave?
Ocupo saber si usted es legal en este país, sí o no.
Yo no respondo preguntas sin mi abogado. ¿Estoy detenida o me puedo ir?
She repeats it again. I don't answer questions without my lawyer. Am I being detained or am I free to leave?
Ir.
Permítame un segundo.
He says, give me a second. They walk away.
Que señora, que tenga buen día.
Adiós.
He says, okay, ma'am, have a nice day.
Buen
día. I guarantee you that they're told probably to ask that question 3 or more times and keep just asking it and seeing if the person will say, I'm not a citizen or something like that in order for them to arrest them. But if you just keep saying, I don't answer questions without my lawyer, am I being detained or am I free to leave? Most of the time they're going to let you leave because they don't actually at that point have a right to arrest you. Anyway, she dealt with it very well. Someone in the chat's asking if the masks on the ICE agents are mandatory. No, I would imagine they're not mandatory. It's because ICE agents, A, don't want to be identified, and B, are worried that you'll dox them, that they're ashamed of what they're doing. I mean, they are the fascist elements of the fascist fist of the state. Like, many of them are ashamed of what they're doing, I think. Thank you, VC Nick, for supporting the show. He says he can't arrest her if she says she's not a citizen. She could have legal right to be in the country without being a citizen. DACA is still a thing. Good point. But I assume her saying, no, I'm not a citizen, I don't know, allows for more questions and can be used against her later in court. But anyway, please, folks, whether it's about immigration or it's something else, some other reason that a cop has stopped you and is trying to get you to say something that incriminates yourself, remember everything she just said, which is, it's really just 3 main things. I'm using my Fifth Amendment right to not answer questions. I have a right to have my lawyer with me. And am I free or am I being detained or am I free to leave? Those things will generally get you the ability to leave most of the time. All right. I want to move on to our guest. Very excited to have her here. Although before I do that, please, everyone, check out my new column over at Substack about the historical precedent of Trump's brand of fascism. It's free to read over there, reallycamp.substack.com. Also, I hope you support this show for a whopping cost of a beer a month. Over at reallycamp.substack.com or at patreon.com/LeeCamp. Thank you for supporting everything. Hold on. Medea's telling me in the chat she can't hear anything. Sorry, folks. 1 second. That's weird. Anyway, hope you see fit to support this show. Oh, and at the end of this episode, at the end of this live stream, I'm going to play the latest and final episode of Unredacted tonight. So if you haven't seen it, I hope you will stay tuned for that in about half an hour. Well, I'm gonna try bringing Medea on and see if I can make it work. Let's see. Looks like she's trying another camera. Hey, Medea, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you on my phone, but some reason I can't hear you on my computer.
That is odd because I think everyone else can hear me. So it must be that something is muted on your computer, I guess. But
well, we can just do it on the phone if that's okay.
Sure, I can hear you well, so that's good.
Yeah, I'll leave the computer. I'll turn that off.
Well, because of the technical difficulties, I failed to give an introduction. She is the co-founder of Code Pink and one of the most amazing and hardworking peace activists in this country. And I feel like, I don't know if there's a Guinness Book of World Record for interrupting Congress and harassing Congress members who are perpetrating war in our names, but if there is, I feel like you'd win it. So thank you for joining us.
Great to be with you, Lee. I miss you in DC.
Yeah, me too. I miss seeing you more. Those were fun years when I could see you fairly regularly. But there's so much to talk about. I guess we should start with. I very much want to get to Cuba because it's not talked about enough. But let's start with Iran. You have traveled there. You know a lot, and in fact wrote a book about Iran, I believe. And I'm just wondering your thoughts about where things stand now, and maybe your insight into the Iranian government and the Iranian population, and like what your travels there tell you about where things stand right now.
I have seen over the years going to Iran when the relations with the U.S. were warming up, then there was more of a civil society. There were groups called Mothers for Peace. There were groups of young people who were cycling around the country, and they actually came here, and we had great interactions with them. We had all kinds of artist groups that we would meet with, and some of them were, they didn't really call themselves dissident. They were not in favor of hardline government, and they weren't very religious. And when things got tough with the United States, those groups disappeared or they went underground, and it became very hard for us to even carry on a correspondence with them. So I know from a very personal level of interaction how the U.S. policy really affects the ability of people inside Iran to make change. Now, people have made change for years. There's so much talk about the women's issue and the terrible crackdown that happened recently is awful and should be condemned. But there have been many gains that women have made over the years, and that's because women have been pushing and organizing. And so it's like anywhere else, even in our own country, when there's a hardline government, it's hard for us as civil society to find the space to be acting and pushing and trying to make things better. And the same is obviously true in Iran. And it's so crazy when Trump says, well, there's a regime change has happened already. And you see that, you've empowered younger people, perhaps more hardline. I mean, one of the things that you have probably had a chance to chuckle at is the propaganda machine in Iran now that is, as whatever you want to say about it, it is not your old Ayatollahs from the 80 years old. It is a young group and a hip group, and they really know how to communicate with the outside world. So whatever Donald Trump thought he wanted to do, the opposite is happening.
Yeah, and of course the insanity of oh, we want to help the people or help the women, so we're going to bomb schools and kill schoolgirls. It's just so laughably disgusting, the propaganda that's pumped out from our government. Yeah, I obviously, it seems like Iran has the upper hand in many ways right now, and I hope they're able to force this into some kind of continuing ceasefire.
Yeah, we have to worry about the Democrats not wanting Trump to actually find a way out. So it's been interesting. You know, the Democrats in Congress, they have been posing these war powers resolutions to say that Trump's invasion, his militant policies towards Iran need to get congressional approval. But I always worry about those because if you ask Congress for approval to make war, you better be prepared for some of them to be saying, "Oh yeah, we just wanted the procedural, the input," but and it's also very contradictory when we go through the halls of Congress, talking to the more conservative Democrats who have continue to be really bad on Israel. The ones that voted against Bernie Sanders' resolution to block thousand-pound bombs, for example. But yet, those very same people like Chuck Schumer are like, we're going to force another vote on the war powers resolution about Iran, and we're going to keep doing this until the president pays attention to us. So there's just so many contradictory things about some of these folks in Congress, and yet it's what we have, and it's what we have to work with.
So I want to hear about your thoughts on Cuba, how Cuba's doing right now with this horrible siege Trump has put in place. I've been to Cuba once with your group, and it was a wonderful trip, and there's wonderful people there, and it's just so insane to see the U.S. empire trying to strangle a country that has not done anything to anyone.
Yeah, I was in the Senate today because there's going to be a vote on a war powers resolution around Cuba tomorrow. And I went around with a Cuban American. Actually, he's only been here for 8 years. And when we go into the offices, he would talk about how his family in Cuba only gets electricity about 4 hours a day, and what that means for the family, how difficult it is for them to go on with their lives. And I talk from the point of view of somebody who many years ago was a public health nutritionist. And one of the best things about Cuba was the incredibly low infant mortality rate they had, that was lower than here in the United States, 4 deaths per 1,000 live births. And that was true as recently as 2018, 2019, but after COVID and now with Trump's terrible tightening of the blockade, that has more than doubled. So that means so many more babies are dying because their mothers are malnourished, they're born low weight, birth weight babies. They don't have the antibiotics if they get infections in the early stages. The doctors heroically have to hand pump the ventilators when the electricity goes out. So all of these reasons, these problems lead to real children dying.
Yeah, you turn out the lights, and it's similar to the economic sanctions that we've perpetrated on various countries, Syria, for example, and the people that die the most and the earliest are going to be the babies, the elderly. I mean, it really is an attack on the disabled and the elderly and babies. And then we run around going, oh, it's having a great effect. Look what a wonderful thing we're doing by starving babies. It's Unbelievable.
And then you have some of the Cuban American members of Congress, like Maria Elvira Salazar from Miami, who says it's worth it for these mothers to go hungry and these children to have so many necessities that are going unmet. And it reminds me of Madeleine Albright back in the days of the Gulf War, when there were 500,000 children that died because of the brutal sanctions we put on Iraq. And she said it was worth it. So it's so inhumane, especially when these Cuban Americans, you wonder, do they even have any relatives anymore in Cuba? Because if you do, you must want your relatives to be able to have food and medicines and the basics of life. How can you consider yourself a person with a heart that wants to bring more liberty to the Cuban people when you're denying them the most basic things for life?
Yeah, again with the propaganda. Oh, we're really trying to help Cuba by starving them and cutting off their fuel sources. It's so disgusting. What
Can
about?
I bring up one other thing,
Yeah,
Lee,
please.
which is when I worked as a public health nutritionist, I worked in some very remote areas in Africa. And in fact, my first interaction with Cubans was when I had a horrible case of malaria. I blacked out. I thought I was going to die. And it was Cuban doctors who revived me. And ever since then, I've had a tremendous love for these Cuban doctors that have been in so many countries around the world, rich ones, poor ones, helping when there are earthquakes, natural disasters, Ebola, COVID. And this has had at one point been a source of revenue as well as a lifesaver for so many people around the world. And the US has pressured countries all over the world to send back the Cuban doctors. And so you can find videos of people in places like Guatemala and Honduras crying when the Cuban doctors are being forced to leave because their governments have been told, if you want any aid from the United States, you better send these doctors home. So it's really such an evil, evil, diabolical policy that's hurting not only people in Cuba, but hurting people around the world.
Yeah, the number one export from Cuba used to be excellent medical care and doctors. The number one export from the U.S., I think it's ignorance and KFC, I think are the two.
I would say bombs.
And bombs, yes, absolutely. Um, what updates have you been hearing from Venezuelans? Obviously, Maduro is being tortured in our prisons. Delcy Rodriguez is trying to, manage an impossible situation in which she doesn't want to piss off Trump too much, or they'll just kidnap her or kill her. And as I read from Craig Murray, who was in Venezuela recently, she also knows that if Trump were to attack and collapse the government of Venezuela, the first thing that the far right lunatics would do is run through the towns finding left wingers to execute. So it really is an impossible situation.
Yeah, we were there not long ago, and it's so surreal to see the contradictions firsthand when you know that Delcy Rodriguez is really forced to meet with and give concessions to the oil companies and people invested now in the gold mines and rare earths. And yet, on the other hand, the Chavistas still control most aspects of the government. They still control the budget. They're still able to funnel funds to some of the very good programs that they've been promoting. Uh, the yeah, I know there are lots of people who say that Delcy is a traitor for working with the U.S., but I think that she has no choice, especially trying to save the lives and free Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia. I think they know that They have to go along in many ways with the United States while this bogus trial goes forward in New York. And hopefully they will win the trial, or hopefully there will be some negotiations to free Maduro and the First Lady. But I think that people really have to have more of a deeper understanding of what Delcy Rodriguez and the others in the government have to deal with, and how difficult it is, and how much they are navigating this, trying to keep alive the best pieces of the Bolivarian Revolution, and trying to free the two former leaders who are in prison right now.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, Trump has proven, and the Trumpians have proven that they're unhinged and they'll murder anyone. So it is clear that if she didn't work with him to some extent, they would bomb the infrastructure of Venezuela, and many, many, many more are going to die. How about another topic is Gaza, where it's getting I'd say 100th of the media coverage, but of course it continues to be a genocide there, just a genocide where bombs are not falling as often.
Yes, it's terrible that the conditions continue to be so horrific for the people there, and yet so little attention now. Although I must say, when there was attention, like for the Board of Peace, it was awful as well. It
Yeah.
was interesting being at the correspondence dinner. Some of us were inside in the lobby and in the place before you.
Oh, were you?
We didn't jump the security metal detector. We stayed outside there, and we talked about the journalists who were killed in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Lebanon, in Iran as well, and showed pictures of Amal, the Lebanese journalist who was just killed last week. And there's a little clip of me going up to Wolf Blitzer and say, "Do you know this woman?" And he said, "No, I don't know who it is." And I said, "She was just murdered by Israel, 20-year journalist. And don't you think you should have some not only sympathy, but outrage for these journalists who are being killed? These are your colleagues." And they don't want to talk about it. But really, it is so
and Blitzer
outrageous.
and Blitzer came from AIPAC.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. He came from AIPAC. And so many of the others who didn't come from AIPAC are just as callous when it comes to the murder of their colleagues. If they mention it, they do it in such a mundane way, like, "Oh, another journalist killed." But you might remember the Wall Street Journal uh, uh, journalist, Evan Gersovich, who was captured by the Russians, and there was front page news about it on and in the TV every single day. I remember just being bombarded with news about his unlawful detention, and luckily he was let out. He wasn't killed. He wasn't physically tortured like these journalists are by Israel, and yet it's so obvious that the US media has very little concern for the people, the Palestinian people, the Lebanese people, and now the Iranians.
Yeah, it seems that the U.S. media has sold their souls a long time ago, and don't seem to care even about their colleagues that are being murdered. Israel is the number one murderer of journalists, above and beyond the past several years.
Yeah, we also had my partner Tig Berry and another friend Gus inside the lobby, and where they take the pictures that show White House Correspondents' Dinner, they got in front of that and took out a mask of Hegseth and an arrest Hegseth sign, and said, "Shame on you, especially CBS, for inviting Hegseth as your guest at this dinner. And he really needs to be arrested." And then we read out a number of the reasons why he should be arrested, which included the overseeing of this war in Iran, the killing of the girls in Minab, but also the killing of over 160 people in those boats in the Caribbean and in the Pacific that continue to this day. And so little news about it. In fact, when it happens now, it barely even makes the news. And we have just launched a new campaign called Arrest Hegseth because we think it is so atrocious what he has been doing, to say nothing about his Pulp Fiction version of the Bible.
So were you outside the Hilton when the shit went down?
No, we had already left by then.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, luckily.
Well, thank you so much, Medea, for coming to talk with me. You've been putting out amazing content, wonderful videos. Where's the best place for people to follow you and Code Pink?
Both on social media at Code Pink and me, Medea Benjamin.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Stay safe. I hope they don't arrest you anytime soon at the Capitol building.
Good to be on with you, and much love to your family.
Thank you, Medea.
Bye-bye.
All right. Medea Benjamin, always great to talk with her. She's on the front lines accosting our political representatives in the best kind of way. Okay, I mentioned this before I started the interview, but I wanted to show you real quick the latest column. Proof Trump's brand of fascism will flame out quickly. And it's a historical analysis of recent, not actually that, recent, but also going back 100 years, fascist regimes and how they usually, they all ended, but the length of them varies greatly, the length of a fascist regime. And it comes from basically, I am using Nafeez Ahmed's analysis as a jumping off point to talk about the odds of the Trump regime, or at least his brand of fascism, even if he were to say leave and then like he's supposed to after the next election and, put in J.D. Vance or something, whether that brand of fascism would continue for a long time or flame out quickly. And anyway, I think you'll find a lot of interesting. I learned a lot from Nafeez Ahmed's analysis, but then also using it as a jumping off point. So that's at reallycamp.substack.com. Free to read over there, but I hope you subscribe while you're over there. And let's see, I'll bring you at least one more. Got to bring you at least one more story before we wrap this up. And then I'll show you the latest episode of Unredacted Tonight, the last episode, the final episode of Unredacted Tonight. For those who, I think there's still some confusion. I've tried to explain it a lot, but my live streams will obviously continue 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It is just Unredacted Tonight, my half-hour, 20, 25-minute comedy show that has ended. So I keep repeating that so that people know it, but some people still go, I thought Lee ended. It's like, no, it didn't. I wasn't murdered. It was one show that ended. Anyway, here is one more story before we get to the last episode of Unredacted Tonight. And thank you, let's see, Gonzo, for supporting the show. Really appreciate it. Okay, hold on. Clicking too many buttons here. Okay, so this is from Steven Simler. Steven Simler does great work. Had him on this show before. Great data analysis. I'm glad he's doing it because I don't want to. But this is about what the $5.5 trillion for the Pentagon could fund instead. And in fact, I did a similar Substack about what 1.5 trillion could fund, but he has found things that I did not. President Trump's budget proposal for the next year manages to be $361 billion larger than last year's, despite cutting $300 billion in social programs and other public investments. The main reason is the vast increase in military spending. We're fighting, so he's cutting, food stamps while he's trying to increase the military budget to $1.5 trillion. And as I have mentioned several times, 1.5 right now, our military is about $1 trillion a year. That is 100. That is the expenditure of 140 countries' military budget combined. Combined, it's 140 countries. If it goes up, if ours goes up to 1.5 trillion, we will then spend more than every country on earth except China and Russia combined. Every country on earth combined except China and Russia. All right. But he says the main reason for the increase is the vast increase in military spending. Trump said recently, and I played this clip before, we're fighting wars. It's not possible for us to take care of daycare, Medicaid, Medicare, all these individual things. We have to take care of one thing, military protection. That's right. We need to spend all our money murdering children. And so we don't have time to take care of American children. No, how could you? I mean, who's got that kind of time? Not to mention money. Take care of American children? No, we're focused on murdering children overseas, guys. That's where the money needs to go. The Washington Post. I also brought you this story. Listen, I'm fucking on it, all right? The Washington Post had a story not too long ago. Trump aides struggle with how to spend $500 billion more on military. They couldn't even, he just wanted to up it to 1.5 trillion. They don't even know where the money would go. They can't figure out where to spend that much money. The Washington Post, which is a right-wing pro-war lunatic newspaper, is they don't know what to do with that much money. A $1.5 trillion budget is more than the Pentagon knows what to do with, Stephen Semler says. Okay, so here's what he lists as things that the $1.5 trillion budget could cover. Keep in mind, as I go through these, this is all combined. This is not one. The $1.5 trillion budget would cover all these combined. $93 billion would end world hunger. $318 billion would end global extreme poverty. Global extreme poverty. $29 billion, a fraction, like a rounding error of our military budget would end U.S. homelessness. A fraction. Medicaid for the uninsured, $214 billion. Universal U.S. pre-K paid for, $35 billion. Send $600 checks to 235 million struggling Americans. Would cost $141 billion. And $596 billion would cover powering half of U.S. households with solar. $596 billion. So you add all of that up, still less than a single year of our death machine. Still less. And if you were to take just one of these, and this is kind of what I focused on in my Substack column on this, if you were to take just one of these, like the $93 billion to end world hunger, that's per year, although I'd be interested to see an analysis on what that would be, 10 years out, because obviously if you end world hunger for people this year, then those people who are no longer starving to death are going to find ways to benefit, raise up their lives. And so you probably are not spending $93 billion every year, but let's just pretend you are. $93 billion ends world hunger per year. If you were to just focus on that, you could end world hunger for what? 15 years? More than 15 years with 1 year of Pentagon budget? 15 fucking years of no world hunger, all thanks to the U.S. And another thing I'd like to point out, which I feel like I'm the only one who ever points. I've literally never heard anyone point this out other than myself. I like to give myself credit when I get a moment, when I get some spare time. I'll talk about how great I am. We say we do this for security, or at least the psychopath politicians say they do this for our security, right? Spend this much on military. We need a giant military security, national security. All right. If you were to end world hunger just for 1 year, but let's for the sake of debate, 15 years. You had world hunger for 15 years with 1 year of Pentagon spending. Nothing would bring us more security in this stupid world than being the country that ended world hunger. Are you kidding me? We would be beloved. Right now, the world is a combination of furious with the United States and scared of the United States. Those are really the only two things going on right now. Scared of or furious with. If you were the country that ended world hunger, the world would adore you. And even the ones that didn't would be like, but they did end world hunger. We should probably go easy on them. They ended world hunger. Like, it's the security argument is so laughably stupid. But anyway, that is a fascinating analysis of what the 1.5 trillion could be used for. And like I said, I did a similar analysis, but talking about mostly different things. I talked about how easily we could provide clean water for the world, which is the number one killer of people on this planet, is the diseases caused by unclean water. So, and there was 5 years ago, they said it would cost $10 billion to give clean water to the world. Now I think they've upped it, the analysis, to like 30 billion. But if that were the case, I can't do the maths, but that would be dozens of years. With 1 year of Pentagon spending, dozens of years we could give clean water to the world. We would save hundreds of millions of lives. And again, be safer than ever, because the whole world would go, wow, America actually does good in this world. That's crazy how much good the United States does for the world. They saved hundreds of millions of people from dying, which is one of the least favorite things for people to do. All right. Yet again, my Jesus Christ, we spend a lot on murdering people rants. Okay, I'm now going to play the new and unfortunately final episode of Unredacted tonight. For those of you who have not heard me talk about how this is the final episode, I discuss it at length in this episode. So if you'll watch a few minutes from now, you'll get a in-depth analysis of why this is the final episode of Unredacted tonight. Basically, it all largely boils down to it's crazy, suppressed, and censored, and I don't have the money to keep funding it while it's so suppressed. But that's what it boils down to. But I'll give you a lot more detail than that. Anyway, but the episode has a lot more than that. The episode has a lot more topics than that, and I hope you enjoy this final episode. If you haven't seen it, last thing before I start playing that episode, please do subscribe at reallycamp.substack.com. It is free to subscribe, although I hope you feel like you get a beer's worth of content out of me per month. The cost of one beer a month. And, you know, if honestly, like, if you're the type of person that watches my shit once a year, then I understand not joining it. Like, you're not going to pay that beer's worth for something you watch once a year. But if you're the type of person that watches my stuff regularly, or even semi-regularly, even catch a couple a month or read a couple columns a month, then in my opinion, that's worth a beer a month. So I hope you do. Consider joining up. $8 a month, reallycamp.substack.com. You can also do it at patreon.com/leecamp or leecamp.net, my Patreon page. Anyway, and live shows coming up, Los Angeles and LA. Wait, no, that's the same thing. Los Angeles and LA, totally the same thing. Los Angeles and New York City. Grab tickets and details, leecamp.com/schedule. I do not get to tour much. Live comedy show. John F. O'Donnell from Redacted Tonight will be on the show. In New York City, Naomi Caravani will also be on the show from Redacted Tonight. Gonna be a great night. LA, also Ron Plagone will be doing a guest spot as well on the LA show. So don't miss those. That's at leecamp.com/schedule. All right. Without further ado, here is the final, unfortunately, episode of Unredacted Tonight. Explain this. Hello and welcome to the final episode of Unredacted Tonight. More on why it's the final episode coming later. But also on tonight's episode, is the United States worth fighting for anymore? The answer is yes. as long as you like fighting for the bad guys. I mean, the bad guys generally have cooler outfits anyway. Look at the stormtroopers and the orcs. Also coming up, sometimes it seems like this world will never achieve peace. It seems like just war forever. I'll show you why that's a good thing. But first, let me tell you about today's sponsor. Nobody sponsors this show and shows like this one because greedy corporate entities that want to make a lot of money by exploiting people fucking hate this show. And this show doesn't represent their values. So Unredacted Tonight continues to be sponsored by nobody, which might be part of the reason this is the last episode. All that and more coming up right now. Welcome to Unredacted Tonight. I'm the most censored comedian in America, Lee Camp. I was trying to figure out what to cover for my final opening monologue of this show, and I thought, well, I need to really super duper expose the bad guys, like even dupery than normal. How do I do that? And then I realized I need to do it by explaining that right now, we're the bad guys. It's us. The U.S. is not only ruled by psychopaths, as I've explained before, those psychopaths also exhibit the telltale signs of what they call in the biz arrested psychological development. They think like children. Secretary of War and three-time reigning alcoholic of the year, Pete Hegseth, will often refer to getting the bad guys. Meanwhile, Donald Trump will often say that the people he seeks to destroy are very bad people. Sometimes he'll sprinkle in an ugly if he's feeling saucy. So why not explain this topic to these children in a way that they can really understand? So here are 12 ways you know we're actually the bad guys, aka the baddies. Number 1, committing crimes against humanity, defined as widespread or systematic attacks directed against a civilian population. Yeah, we do that shit all day, every day. That's our thing now. In the war against Iran, the U.S. has targeted schools, universities, hospitals, civilian infrastructure, anything we can find. These are all crimes against humanity. And it's constant. You remember when Billie Eilish was first, she first hit and it was just everywhere. You couldn't get away from it. That's U.S. crimes against humanity now. It's everywhere. All the time, everywhere, every country. We're the Billie Eilish of crimes against humanity. And it's no secret. Trump has bragged about it. When you're committing crimes against humanity, you're the bad guys. Number 2, committing terrorism. To figure out if it's terrorism, just look at those same crimes against humanity and decide if they are also intended to create fear and achieve political, ideological, or religious aims. Let me think. Literally no other reason exists for bombing school children other than to create fear in a society. It's the dictionary definition of terrorism. And while groups like ISIS or Al-Qaeda are also made up of terrorists, they couldn't dream of killing 100 children in one shot. The U.S. empire is a far more successful and prolific terrorist. Those other groups look up to us. You remember when you were a kid shooting hoops, trying to be great? That's what Al-Qaeda and ISIS are. But the U.S. is the Michael Jordan poster on their wall. They wish they could terrorize as many as we do. When you're committing terrorism, you're the bad guys. Number 3, allying with well-known terrorists. We work with those same groups. It's no secret that the U.S., Israel, and the UK have worked extensively with ISIS and Al-Qaeda when it's useful. Kit Clarenberg just a few weeks ago detailed how the CIA and MI6 created ISIS. Former Al-Qaeda leader Ahmed al-Sharaa, aka Abu Muhammad al-Jalani, was installed as president of Syria by the US and UK. And recently, he has been the guest of honor in the White House and Buckingham Palace. Apparently, fellow terrorists actually make fast friends. We have the same interests, passions, views on whether other people should get to live best of friends. When you're working with terrorists, you're the bad guys. Number 4, funding and arming genocide. If you disagree with the assertion that we do that, I would ask you which part you disagree with. The funding and arming part or the part about Gaza facing genocide? If it's the latter part, perhaps you should take it up with those 25 highly respected, internationally renowned human rights organizations that have come to the conclusion that Israel has committed genocide in Gaza. If it's the funding and arming part, then you clearly haven't read any things. You should try reading. All the rage. Nah, you're right. Reading blows. There's no fast forward button, no hot actress with her tits out. It's true. My bad. Reading. You see, in Gaza, it's U.S. bombs and U.S. money and U.S. approval that have made the genocide possible. Here's just one little example. The U.S., specifically Antony Blinken, even approved bombing aid trucks in Gaza. When you're funding and arming genocide, you're the bad guys. Number 5, killing roughly 44 million innocent people over the past 50 years. I do have to apologize because that number's not quite accurate. I really am sorry for the fake news. The true number is likely much higher than that. The 44 million estimate comes from taking the Lancet Medical Journal report that 38 million people were killed by the US-EU economic wars and adding it to the roughly 6 million killed by the US global war on terror since 2001. Since these are not the only places and ways the US has killed people, the number is probably higher. But when you kill over 44 million innocent people, you're the bad guys. Number 6, supporting apartheid. What? Where? What? Where's the apartheid? Oh, Israel. Yeah, it's totally apartheid. Well, I mean, only if you mean like literal, actual apartheid, then yeah, that's it. When you're on the side of apartheid, you're the bad guys. Number 7, being one of the only countries to vote against slavery being considered a crime against humanity. Not making this shit up. The U.S. voted against calling slavery a crime against humanity. That's a good look. So what would you call slavery then? A less than savory business practice? A frowned upon efficiency booster? How about a distasteful but necessary trade secret? What the would you call it? When you're on the side of slavery, you're the bad guys. Number 8, laying siege to innocent people. Unless you want to argue an infant in Cuba is a guerrilla fighter, then you kind of have to admit the U.S. is starving a peaceful island full of innocent people who like to smoke cigars and dance. When you're starving children, you're the bad guys. Number 9, kidnapping a democratically elected leader of a sovereign nation. No further explanation needed. When you find yourself murdering 100 people to kidnap a president, you be the bad guys. Number 10, trying to gaslight the world into thinking the country that hasn't bombed anyone in decades is the true threat. Yep, China is totally the real threat, not the country murdering hundreds of thousands. No, not the country with 800 military bases around the world. Not the country bombing schoolhouses. No, it's that guy over here. Get him. When you're trying to claim the country that isn't killing any innocent people is the bad guys, you're the bad guys. Number 11, calling those who work to protect the natural world terrorists. Yes, Trump calls environmentalists terrorists.
What they've done to the country is just incredible. The environmentalists, I mean, they are terrorists. They were terrorists. I call them the environmental terrorists.
I'm tempted to say he doesn't understand what the word terrorist means because he doesn't understand a lot of shit. But in fact, it kind of makes sense. If you're in the business of destroying the natural world, than those who get in the way of your life passion could be quite terrifying. When you call environmentalists terrorists, you're the bad guys. Number 12, voting against UN anti-Nazi resolutions. Yep, that's us. We voted against combating the glorification of Nazism. In fact, we voted against it many times. Why? I guess because the US government likes Nazis. Look up Operation Paperclip or Operation Gladio or Operation Holy Shit, the US government loves Nazis. I feel like it goes without saying that if you're trying to defend Nazis, you're the bad guys. I know I haven't listed all the ways you can tell we're the bad guys, but hopefully I hit on some of the best ones. We're the bad guys. It's us. Break yourself of the idea that we're trying to stop the bad guys. The question then becomes, if we're the baddies, what do we do about it? How do we behave? Do we just go about our lives? Do we just go to the grocery store on Tuesdays and pub trivia night on Thursdays? It's tough to say, but the future of humanity may hinge on whether we start to understand this reality, and soon. Just a note real quick, I have live comedy shows coming up in Brooklyn, New York, and Los Angeles. Go to leecamp.com/schedule for details and tickets. Those events are going to be a hell of a night. Please come on out. Another topic I wanted to hit on this final episode is the everlasting fight for peace. So many people around the world are working toward peace. They want the U.S. and Israel to stop bombing Iran and killing innocent people. They want Israel's genocide of Gaza to end. They want to hinder Israel's new genocide in Lebanon. They want the U.S. not to kidnap President Maduro. They want the U.S. not to lay siege to Cuba until its people starve. Blah, blah, blah. You get it? You get it. All of those wishes or demands are lame. Sorry to say it like it is, but peace is boring. It achieves nothing. At least that's the case for Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu and many others. And we should really follow their lead because they are our betters and our leaders. And they wear suits worth more than our children. No, literally, Trump wore a $20,000 suit. My kid, he's worth like $2,000, maybe $3,000 on a good day, like when he's actually behaving himself and pooping in the vicinity of the toilet. Like you can tell there was an angle towards the toilet. Now, I know some of you are going to say Trump and Netanyahu are the exact definition of psychopaths. This is totally true. That's absolutely, I'm not even arguing that. But seeing as they are also epic, patriotic heroes, that clearly means psychopaths make the best rulers. They both need the death and destruction to continue in order to avoid finding themselves in small cages for the rest of their lives and wearing less expensive orange suits. Sure, that's true. Netanyahu has numerous corruption and war crimes charges hanging over his head. Trump faces the same, but also has sexual assault allegations, the Epstein files, you know the deal. You get the picture. But both of them need to remain president of their respective nations in order to avoid arrest and to distract from all those crimes. Killing people in other countries, that's not a crime. That's just talent. But beyond that, peace achieves nothing good. Think about it. If you're a mega awesome country like the USA, spending enough money on your military to feed the world many times over, you can almost do whatever you want to other countries. So the only reason not to spend your time threatening or crushing or destroying or obliterating said countries is if you don't have anything you need from them. But every country has some kind of resource we can covet or pillage. Even the ones you don't think much about, like, I don't know, Trinidad and Tobago. They're near Venezuela, so we want military bases there, spy bases, and they're a bird watcher's paradise. Maybe our pedophile terrorist government officials want to watch a bird every once in a while. Seriously, you get done just terrorizing and killing people and pedophiling. And you want to see a cockatoo. You want to watch a little parrot do a thing. You know how it is. Point is, every country has something we want. And if they don't have an obvious resource, then their human beings can be the resource we extract. Like in the Matrix, when the robots have the humans in those pods and they're just like sucking out their life force. Oh, no more Matrix analogies. Man, I had gone 3 months sober without a single Matrix analogy, and now I gotta give back my 3-month chip. Shit. Point being, peace stops us from being able to truly leech off those other countries in an enormous way. So peace hurts our bottom line. Peace is a boring nuisance. Let me give an analogy. There's like a giant, strong, tough kid in 5th grade, okay? Every day he walks to school next to a kid half his size. Peace would be represented by those 2 kids walking calmly next to each other to school. Nothing happens. No one gets hurt. No money or toys or candy changes hands. If that big kid is a psychopath, then no one getting hurt has no meaning or value to him. It's boring. It's boring to walk to school like that. But if he hits the small kid in the face, takes his lunch money, very exciting. The big kid profits. People talk about how tough he is. It's far more thrilling and interesting and profitable than silently walking. Peace achieves zilch, zero. War, fighting, unfettered, ruthless assholery gets stuff done. Point being, peace with Iran achieves nothing. Peace with Cuba achieves nothing. Peace with Venezuela achieves nothing. Hell, peace with our own American citizens, nothing. Peace is only a good thing for the non-psychopathic, non-megalomaniacal, non-ruling elite. Peace only benefits 99.99999% of us. But for the unhinged, patriotic, awesome, cool terrorists who lead the U.S. and Israel, it's boring, unprofitable, and stupid. So, folks, this is where Unredacted Tonight says goodbye, at least for now. This isn't exactly new for me. I've been chased from one platform to another, from one show to another, one genre to another. Starting to get a little dizzy at this point. But I know one thing. I won't give up. I will continue to juke and jive, duck and dodge around the censorship, the suppression, and the efforts by the U.S. imperial corporate slime molds to shut down my voice. Those slime molds have now succeeded at causing the end of this show, Unredacted Tonight. This time it only took them about 13 months. So congrats, guys. For those of you who need a quick refresher, I had a very popular weekly comedy news TV show called Redacted Tonight for 8 years. I wrote all my words on that show myself, unlike every other comedy news host you've literally ever seen. And I was never told what to say or what not to say. It was the craziest amount of free speech ever seen on American television. We achieved so many important things at that show that I'm proud of. I revealed the rigging of the 2016 primary against Bernie Sanders, certainly the first to cover it on national television. I created the hashtag ExitPollGate on Twitter, which went viral and alerted millions to the corruption of our so-called democracy. We were also one of the earliest national shows to cover the Standing Rock protests and to reveal the truth about Russiagate. Redacted Tonight was also one of the earlier national shows to cover the story of a person almost no one had heard of at that time, Jeffrey Epstein, is it? Epstein. I can't remember. In 2016, I covered accusations by a young woman who had said in legal filings she had been assaulted at an Epstein party by Donald Trump. At that time, Trump was the no chance in hell GOP presidential primary contender that everyone was just making fun of. We also revealed false flags by the U.S. and Israel and Syria, Gaza, Ukraine, so many others. We covered the truth about the JFK and MLK assassinations that had barely ever been on national television in this country. For covering those topics and countless others, my show had to be stopped by the powers that be. In 2016, the Justice Department greatly restricted the ability of the channel to be seen. They got it banned from most of its distributors. At that same time, my personal Facebook page with 330,000 followers was shadow banned. In 2018, I had attack pieces filled with falsehoods written about me by the New York Times and NPR. Those would not be the last attack pieces against me by national media. Then in 2022, the U.S. government shut down the channel entirely with economic sanctions. You see, the U.S. empire is super strong and super awesome, but evidently can't handle a single channel out of like 1,000 reporting the truth about the U.S. empire. At that same time, within a week, my main YouTube channel was banned around the world. My Spotify podcast banned. My Twitter account was heavily suppressed, and my Facebook continued to be suppressed. I created a new YouTube page having no connection to RT America and a new podcast. Of course, starting from scratch on a platform is like taking a nuclear bomb to any kind of growth or fan base. Then in 2023, after only a month or two of speaking out about the genocide in Gaza, my TikTok was banned with no reason and no right to appeal. That happened way before Larry Ellison had bought it and while Biden was still in office. So then last year, as you know, I created my own independent version of Redacted Tonight. This show, Unredacted Tonight. This show is not connected to any TV network or corporate entity. It's just been me doing what I'm good at. Comedy that speaks the truth and fights for peace, justice, sustainability, a better world. At first, it seemed that we would be allowed to grow organically on YouTube, which was all I was hoping for. I didn't care about making a lot of money. I just wanted to see the show growing. For the first 3 or 4 months, the numbers did grow. And the more people saw it, the more they shared it, the better it did. And it was actually doing pretty well. That was all I wanted to see. But then it happened again. The same thing that happens to me whenever anything I do starts to gain traction. The numbers collapsed, just cratered. None of the videos could grow or do well. Nothing I tried made any difference. Haters would love to say at this point, dude, it's not suppression. You just suck. So people don't like your shit. That's all it is. First of all, you sound dumb. Stop making that voice. And also, stop being a dick. But here's why that take is provably wrong. It's obvious from the analytics that the crushing of this show was a concerted effort by YouTube or whoever, Google. The data makes clear that YouTube, for a brief period, recommended my videos to people who were likely to enjoy them, as well as recommending my videos to subscribers of this channel, people who had already clicked that they wanted to hear about our videos. That's how YouTube is supposed to work. Then YouTube stopped doing any of that. Neither new viewers nor fans were being alerted to most episodes. Basically, to be alerted about one of these episodes, you have to watch everything I've ever done, and then maybe YouTube will tell you about a new episode. Unfortunately, this show costs me a lot of money to make, since it has no big-time backers, since we're sponsored by nobody, and it can't generate ad dollars without YouTube views. I lose a great deal every month making this show. So while this is the end of Unredacted Tonight, I want you to know I'm not giving up. My live streams, I hope you watch, called Dangerous Ideas, will continue every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. My podcasts called Moment of Clarity, The Lee Camp Show, and Common Censored will continue 3 or 4 days a week as well. And my Substack columns will continue to come out every week. That is assuming I can find enough people willing to throw me the cost of one beer per month. I hope you see fit to support my work either at realleecamp.substack.com or patreon.com/leecamp or at leecamp.net. It's good to follow on multiple platforms in case one is banned or suppressed. Looking back, ever since that first night of Occupy Wall Street, standing on that dark street with a energy-filled, exuberant group of protesters in Lower Manhattan, I knew we were up against the most powerful entities on the planet. I felt more alive, honestly, than I'd ever felt. But I could also see the coming storm. We were then and are now trying to shift society away from the psychopathic, genocidal, pedophiliac greed monsters that own and run nearly everything. If you're one of us and you stick with this path, it never gets easy. And perhaps that's why so many of the activists I used to know have fled to either the warm waters of apathy or the loving embrace of the two corporate, slimy, oligarchic parties. Why keep fighting for a better world when it's just so much easier and more profitable to join the villains? You can get rich. A lot of the people I know in this same kind of job, similar jobs, they have gotten rich. So why stick with this path? I don't know. I do it because the success we achieve has nothing to do with money or fame or ease or comfort. Our success is seen in a new awareness. It's made up of a growing desire for a world outside of imperial, cancerous capitalism, a world with a future, a world without war. It's a success that can't be measured with dollars or clicks or followers or ticket sales. Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I'm naive. But I'm going to keep fighting. And now, this final episode wouldn't be complete without some goddamn future headlines. Coming up in just 1 week, we'll learn from another shocking direct-to-camera speech. Melania tells Nation she has no idea who Jeffrey Epstein is. And if she does, they never had sex. And if they did, she doesn't know what sex is. And if she does, it's not what you think. Well, I'm sold. And coming up in mid-May, we'll read Democrats hope to win midterms with new slogan. We have 28% fewer pedo rapists than the GOP. Well, I'm sold. And in August, we'll find out Nation's grandmothers now charging subscription fee. I knew unfettered free grandma access was too good to be true. That's it. The last episode.
Can I go home now?
No. It just makes me feel better to know you're here, even if we aren't filming.
Okay.
Damn straight. Even though this is the last episode, I will still be live streaming Monday, Wednesday, Friday, youtube.com/@unredacted tonight. And I'll be posting weekly columns on Substack. And I have live comedy coming up in Brooklyn, New York, and Los Angeles. Go to leecamp.com/schedule for details and tickets. And if you want to help all my work continue, please join up at realleecamp.substack.com or patreon.com/leecamp for the cost of one beer a month. I'll see you at the next live stream. Remember, the revolution will have laughter. Keep fighting.